Hi, I thought I'd give you a quick video on what's currently on the table, which is Stalingrad 42 by GMT Games. This is designed by Mark Simonich. He's done a series of these games using a very familiar system once you've learnt the first one. He did one called the Caucasus Campaign. He's done Normandy 44, Ukraine 43, one on the Ardennes, and one on Arnhem as well. And they all have a very similar system, which is quite nice because you feel pretty much like you're putting on a pair of comfy shoes that you're not going to have to unlearn too much from what you've learned before to be able to get into the game. I think I sold the Caucasus Campaign partly because it was going for a good price because it's out of print, and secondly because I was aware that this was coming down the track, and I thought, well, this probably does a similar job of allowing you to game the sort of Caucasus. I believe there's actually a separate scenario on just the Caucasus part of the campaign, as well as of course adding all the other elements as well. So that one I got rid of. I also parted company with the Normandy one, which I never quite got on with. But all the others I really liked. I sold the first edition of the Ardennes and bought there's a re-release, the third edition. And I was quite excited to get my hands on this, and it's quite a big beast. I use 3 4x2 bits of MDF board, which I sort of strap and dowel together, and the playing area that you need to play if you want to do the campaign game, which of course all big boys want to do, it's a 4x4 area, because the map width wise is about 47.5 inches, so it's tight but it fits. Great relief. Number of scenarios. You can play a single mapper if you want to do just the opening 8 turns. I think it sets a fairly challenging target of 8 victory points. I did the case blue scenario, the opening gambit. Tried that, failed to get a German win. I think I was about 5 of 8 required victory points, but I thought that's fun, let's set it up again and try the campaign. So that's what I'm doing at the moment, and I'm up to, I think, just starting turn 13, and yeah, I'm enjoying it. There's a possibility of playing it next month at a con in the UK. We might do a 2-player, but I think it would also lend itself to maybe sort of 2-a-side. Give some friction between what goes where. Might give a fairly historical feel for who gets the sort of lion's share of the resources. It uses the Zoc bond mechanic, which, for those that are not familiar, lots of these war games have zones of control, or ZOCs, which most combat units exhibit, which essentially restrict and limit movement. What this system has, and all the games in the series have, is a ZOC bond, where if you have 2 friendly units which both exhibit a ZOC into the same hex or along the hex side, then you get either a hex bond or a hex side bond, which basically means that you cannot enter a hex bond if it's a ZOC bond, and you cannot cross a hex side bond. I think that works quite nicely. It shows how you can form a very effective line of troops. So, a bit of a funny concept to get your head around. Once you've got it, you've got it. and you know, a bit like sort of riding a bike, it becomes second nature. And there's little rules about the effect of major rivers on the Zot bonds and what does and what doesn't break them. But the rule book's really good, explains lots of examples. I think Mark Simnich also does the artwork for the counters and the map, and it's got a very consistent feel with the others in the series, which I really like. What else can we say about it? I think that it plays very very smoothly. The game turns are pretty quick actually, very, very simplistic. You start off with an initial phase where you get a couple of resource points. Where this game differs from the others in the series is that the headquarters can give shifts by supporting combat, and when the headquarters is used for that shift, it's then flipped over and can't be flipped back unless you get a supply point to it, and they come in form of trucks, and you essentially get 2 resource points a turn, which you can either move by road or rail the trucks onto the map, and if you can stack them with one of the HQs in the start of the phase, you can flip them over. Or if the HQ is on a rail line that you've converted, you can do it without the trucks, which obviously makes the situation easier, but you're trying to re-gauge the track all the time, so there's a bit of a delay where the converted track is sitting behind the front line as you're sort of trying to catch up. The other familiar concept is the determined defence, which gives some very nice choices where if the attacker has a successful combat, the defender has to retreat. They become either disrupted or go into full retreat, which is not a great state to be in because it limits your options and your strengths on your turn, and they're only removed or reduced from full retreat to disrupted at the end of your following turn. So you have a turn of them on sort of subpar performance, but you can potentially avoid having to retreat by having a successful determined defence, and you roll on another table depending on the terrain, whether you're in clear, in a fort, in a city, and the type of units. So the game has the concept of green troops, line troops and elite troops, and the elite troops get bonuses when they're trying to hang on to hexes. There's a limitation on the initial 7 turns of the game where the Russians can only attempt that if they are in fortifications or in a position which doubles their defence. Then Stalin decreed his not one step back mandate, which gave them the ability to try it sort of anywhere really. The other thing which is different from the other systems is same hex combat for the cities. Now there was a game called Campaign to Stalingrad by Rhino Games. I think it's probably one of Mark Simnich's first designs which I had, and that actually harks back to that particular way of modelling city combat, whereby it's not an all or nothing affair. You can partially get a foothold in a city, be it minor or major city. So that's a nice combat. So I guess I'm not at the gates of Stalingrad yet, but we fought our way through a couple of the got into Rostov, and it's got that, you have some success, but it's not the guys kicked out. You're able to get some troops into the city, and you get that sort of city fighting sense, which not many games capture at this sort of level. So that's a nice thing to have in this, which isn't in the other games in the series. So that's about it really. I'm not going to make it a lengthy or overly lengthy ramble. I like what I see so far. There were no surprises. couple of questions on some of the issues with the full retreat, and whether they used to still have Zocs, and would that limit the advance after combat. But Mark Simonich is very happy to answer emails even sent to him directly, rather than on forums like Consim World. So he definitely supports his games, which is greatly appreciated. And I'll take a bit of a footage of the map, and you'll get some idea of the scale. See what you think. So, sorry about the glare from the light, but it's a bit of a dull afternoon here. We'll start in the northern part. You see the city of Voronezh. Now Voronezh, I believe, might be a bit of a dead end. If you're going to have to commit a lot to take Voronezh, and I'm not sure you can afford the time early in the game. So that's essentially set up a front line all the way along the Don up into Kalach. You'll see there's a Russian guard defending that crucial crossing. Supply is essentially tied to roads in this, so you can trace back, I think it's 5 hexes to a road, and then you've got to go back to a source of supply. So just crossing over the Don is not the be all and end all. You want to get across it where you've got access to a decent road system. So for example here, where the Germans have got some armour across the Don, that's probably not as bad as you think, because there is no ferry there, there's no road. So that was just a threat to try and divert some Russian attention, whereas here, for example, you can see the road going across the river. So that's more of a serious incursion. So it's German turn 13, so they'll be trying to consolidate their position, and down towards Rostov, which you'll see here, just at the Sea of Azov, where the start of the Don. If I just pan back, you'll see it's quite a big place. You know, what were the Germans thinking of? I don't know. So you've got options to push on into Stalingrad. There's a fistful of victory points there. There is a sudden death victory. So if you get a target, and if you fall, I think 6 short of it, you lose, and if you are 6 ahead of it, you get an instant win. So you could get a sudden bucket full. But you can see you've got the options. I don't think, a bit like in the historical outcome, you've got the option to drive into the Caucasus and the VPs in that area, whilst at the same time putting a credible threat into Stalingrad. But there you go. I think it's a good one. Certainly enjoying it, and I may do another one with a final wrap up. We'll see how far I get with it.